What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Savvy, and welcome back to the Savvy Show. And in today's episode, I feel like we have a fantastic and interesting SCP potentially on our hands. I'm saying potentially because I'm not even too sure this is a SCP, and I'll get into that later on. But yo, this SCP, if it is one, is going to be very similar to SCP-3812. A voice behind me, that is the most powerful SCP. The first non-animation I did on the channel. If you guys were fascinated with that story, you like how it panned out, you're gonna love this one because we're on the street is we have another reality bender on our hands, guys. This is gonna be interesting. I heard this is another reality bender and the story is very, very, very unique and it's well written. So I'm really excited to see what's in store for us today because personally, I enjoy reading stories about reality benders and interesting stories that flow well together and it's put well together. And so far what I heard, this is what we have today. So if you guys are excited about that, yo, like always with these non-animations, feel free to smash that like button more than any of the other videos I have on the channel. This will really show me and push me to make more content, which is non-animations, especially if you guys want to see it. So let's just try to get 60 likes on this one, just like the last one, and let's keep it pushing, guys. All gas, no brakes. We're the strongest family on the tube, and let's get it done together. And also, like always, if you guys have joined the family, remember turn on post notifications so you do not miss an upload because YouTube does not always notify you when I post. But if you didn't even join the family yet, that's the first step. You need to check that box out first. Smash that red button and stay tuned. And yo, it's going to be a blast, guys. If you love my reaction style, you love SCP content, this is the best place to be. And have fun with the family. So with that all the way, without any further ado, let's get this show started. Alrighty. Exploring the SCP Foundation. The stars do not wait for you. So that is what I was talking about. They didn't really say SCP, whatever number, the stars do not wait for you. It's basically just the stars do not wait for you. So I think this is just going to be a nice story. It would be cool if they have a different twist and this SCP turned into SCP later down the road or vice versa. So let's see what this has in store for us because this is interesting by just the title alone already. So let's get it popping.
The stars do not wait for you. We're often told throughout life by parents, teachers, and motivational speakers that life is what we make it, and if we have the will to make something happen, we can do it. While that's potentially true most of the time, it doesn't always feel like it, and many go through periods in their life where they feel helpless to change their situation.
Everyone does,
the
yeah.
tale I'll be looking at today is focused on this concept of helplessness, as a scenario plays out without hope or possibility of being changed.
Whoa.
Although not essential to appreciating the story, knowing a little bit about its central SCP does enhance it a bit. The tale is written from the perspective of SCP-1915, a man in his 30s with no relatives or close friends who was recovered by the Foundation at a defunct corporate building.
Wow, so he was recovered at the Foundation. That's interesting. And just go along the lines of with these SCPs, at least these reality benders that I've been reading that are not non-animation, I really like how they make them helpless. But because it seems like it's contradicting their own abilities, because they are reality benders. They should be able to control almost anything, literally anything in the universe and multiple universes. But we shall see, at least in the story, and the last reality bender we reacted to, the voice behind me, they made them helpless. So it's always interesting because they're not just OP from the rep. This is what makes it an interesting story. That's what I'm just saying. At least for me, in my own perspective.
Where he believed he was still employed.
Let me rewind a little bit.
1915's relatives or close friends who was recovered by the Foundation at a defunct corporate building, where he believed he was still employed. 1915's anomalous trait is that he subconsciously alters reality around him to maintain his own personal status quo.
Wait, did they just say the SCP name? 1915? Hold up. So I'm assuming it's SCP-1915, so it is SCP. Maybe you just forgot to put the SCP number. Let me just rewind it just to make sure. I don't want to say something that I'm not positive about.
Building, where he believed he was SCP-1915.
Yeah,
a
SCP.
Man in his 30s with no relatives or close friends who was recovered by the Foundation at a defunct corporate building.
Wow.
Where he believed he was still employed.
So he worked for the Foundation?
1915's anomalous trait is that he subconsciously alters reality around him to maintain his own personal status quo,
Whoa.
negating any significant changes to his body, personality, memory, or lifestyle. 1915 mostly changes non-living matter around him, as well as people that he interacts with temporarily,
You changed the people?
altering environments, objects, clothing, etc. to suit his status quo. 1915 doesn't seem to have any control over this effect, and also is unaware of it, expressing discontent at the nature of his mediocre life during interviews.
Yo, so he's basically a slave within himself. He's not controlling. He doesn't even know he's doing this. Doesn't even know he's a reality bender? Yo, whoa, this is kind of weird. So he thinks this is actually how things are, without him manipulating anything from so far what we heard. This is already juicy.
During initial recovery from the corporate building back to a Foundation site, 1915 altered the armored vehicle into a city bus, the same that he would normally use to commute to work. He was convinced that the MTF members were other passengers, and the agent driving the vehicle was briefly convinced that he was a city bus driver.
Wow. Briefly,
Upon arriving at his cell, 1915 altered it into an exact replica of his apartment, complete with functioning electronic devices and running water in the bathroom.
What?
These ceased to function after removing 1915 from the cell. In the morning, 1915 walked out of his locked cell and entered a nearby maintenance closet, altering it into his cubicle at the corporation, with working telephone and internet connections.
This is interesting.
He proceeded to apologize to site security for having to come in after hours to finish the budget report, as he needed the extra income.
Oh my god, yo. This is really nutty. Does his power have an own mind of its own to do this for, this 30-year-old dude? Because he has no knowledge of him actually doing this. And it's not stated that he knows that he has powers. And so far, he just thinks everything is like normal in his life. Like he's not like taken prisoner. Like he's going back to his apartment and everything. So, I wouldn't know. Does this powers have a mind of its own or something? Because that would be kind of interesting. And why is it doing it? Why is he making him a false reality? Can he not handle his own reality? What's going on?
During an interview, 1915 was convinced that the Foundation doctor was a co-worker, who also became convinced of the same fact, telling 1915 that he was a junior accountant on Bernstein's team. 1915 tells the doctor to tell Lisa to give him a call sometime, but then he immediately tells him to forget it, because she's just going to reject him, and this way he can still dream.
Oh my god.
1915 is inherently a tragic character, an
Seems
individual
like
with no hope of changing his routine life, and no clue that he's the one responsible for keeping it that way.
Dang.
Odd and tragic, but not incredibly dangerous, as the Foundation simply lets him continue thinking that he's going to work every day.
That's so sad. That is so sad. You have the powers to change your reality. Literally change your reality. Not just like, working hard and willing it. You can actually manipulate it to whatever you choose, but he's just not aware about that power that he has. Yo. Oh man, that is tragic indeed.
That brings us to The Stars Do Not Wait for You, a tale in which 1915 realizes what he actually is, with horrifying consequences. There are a number of references inside this tale, from Cain and Abel to SCP-343 to Dr. Wondertainment to Dear God.
They're dropping all? Oh, yo. No, they're doing this to us today? Yo, this must be a special day for us because we got something juicy on our hands, guys. Yo, let's hear those name drops again, guys. Oh my god. Are you kidding me? They're bringing them all in this. Yo, I'm excited now.
The Foundation simply lets him continue thinking that he's going to work every day. That brings us to The Stars Do Not Wait for You, a tale in which 1915 realizes what he actually is, with horrifying consequences.
Oh no.
There are a number of references inside this tale, from Cain and Abel to SCP-343 to Dr. Wondertainment to the Dear God.
Dear God too?
But whether you understand them all doesn't really take away from the tale.
This is great.
Without further ado, let's get into it.
Let's get into it for real, indeed.
It's quiet out here. The desert sprawls from horizon to horizon, where purest white meets twilight red. There are no edges here, no angles, just curves and the gentle rise and fall of dunes as far as the eye can see, and everywhere beyond that. Had a visitor from some other world laid eyes on this place, they might have found it serene, even beautiful, pure. I can enjoy no such delusions, regretfully, for I know what lies beneath and among the sands of the endless desert. A charnel house spanning an entire planet, 7 billion human souls ground thin and fine until no trace of their existence could ever be found.
Does he already know at this point what he is? And when they said what is that exactly? Because maybe he might not even be a human. Maybe his mind is perceiving that image for him to think that he's some 30-year-old dude. Maybe that's not his actual reality. Maybe that's still just a conjuring that his mind, well, his powers are doing to him. Maybe he's not who he even thinks he is. Like, that's even scary. Like, yo, how about you just wake up one day, you find out like what you really are, and is that the person you saw in the mirror every morning? Like, yo, wouldn't that be kind of crazy and scary? Oh my god, no wonder this probably ended bad if that's the case. Like, but I don't think it's that far. But I don't think it's that far off the spectrum. Like, yo, but we'll keep it going.
I know this because I put them all there. Oh, brother, it all happens so fast once we're gone. It began the day you that I have never known, found my power. The power I hid from myself in some previous life, for reasons I can now easily guess. I was looking out of the window of my apartment so I could see the stars, and instead I saw you, blazing as you tore yourself asunder to keep the power away from yourself. You didn't trust what you would do with it, and so you chose to throw it away.
What?
You knew yourself all too well, as I suspect I did too, at one point. By all accounts, I should not have been able to see you, for my apartment was truly a tiny containment cell about half a mile underground, but such considerations never meant much to one living entirely in his own world.
Wow.
When I saw the moment of your demise, I became aware of myself for the first time in... I have no idea in how long. Whichever part of me that led me to throw away my power did the same to my will, trapping it in an internal status quo from which there could be no release.
So when he threw away his power, he threw away his will. And then once he saw this one dude die, that's when he regained consciousness about, what he really was. Dang, this was really a lot. Hold up. Let me rewind a little bit.
But such considerations never meant much to one living entirely in his own world.
Yeah.
When I saw the moment of your demise, I became aware of myself for the first time in... I have no idea in how long.
His demise. Like, is he talking to himself in like a different person, or is this actual different entity with the same powers that he threw away and then he received, and then couldn't trust himself and then blocked it off? Like they're dropping a lot right now.
Whichever part of me that led me to throw away my power did the same to my will, trapping it in an internal status quo from which there could be no release. An eternity of filing spreadsheets for employers who existed solely in my head, of 9 o'clock meetings with no one, of fake masturbatory crushes over imaginary women.
Oh my god, that's so
An
sad.
eternity of tired, grinding mediocrity. That was over that night, with your soul burning in the atmosphere like the loneliest of stars. I awakened. I died. For whatever left that little cell-turned-apartment wasn't me anymore.
Okay, so from what I gathered right now, he was still living in that routine life that his body, well, his powers is conjuring for him, and he sees a shooting star or like burning really fast. I guess it's the person that had the powers previously. I'm not too sure about that part, but that was a transition when he realized like, yo, I know what I am now, and that's when I died. And when he said died, I feel like it's referring to that life that he thought was real. Him being a worker, 30-year-old dude. That's fake. That's the part of him that died. And now he's back to knowing who he actually is. That's what I gathered. So let's keep it pushing.
I was never more than an earthworm, distinct from all the rest, only in that I had a little more control over the soil in which I crawled.
Good analogy.
They never thought me more than a minor reality bender, a bundle of introverted powers and neurosis that was very unlikely to ever pose any serious threat.
Oh,
and
time
they
to
were
change.
right.
Yo.
The person I was, SCP-1915 as they called me, never was anything other than that.
Was.
But 1915 died that day, watching a fallen star. The thing that then swatted the guards posted at its cell like they were less than gnats, that raised Site-17 into this fine white sand that is now so warm beneath the feet, that was something else. Not an entity, for that would imply a personality, and this thing surely has none. Not a purpose, for there was no purpose behind its actions then, nor will there be for any of its actions to come.
Yo.
Nor was it a will, for it wants nothing. Not vengeance, not dominion, not freedom, not even simple power. No, if I had to describe that thing as anything at all, it would be an absence, a void where the entity should be, a lack of purpose, an imbecile force devoid of all will, an absence.
Wow.
The sand is still warm to the feet. That means the sun still burns high above. I wonder why it lets it remain when all else was so quickly erased, when it could so easily just reach and pluck it out of the sky. Had it been another, I'd suspect it was to mock humanity's memory, to mock that sliver of me that still persists in the flesh, stubborn like a buried tick. But this is the absence. It does not mock.
The absence, the
After
void.
Site-17's destruction, retaliation soon followed. Standard containment teams at first, though certainly still enough to meet any anomaly the Foundation imagined could be contained in Site-17 with overwhelming force.
Nice.
When those men failed to return, failed to even report their arrival, more serious measures had to be taken. Site-17 had always been isolated, and so they could act freely. Gunships and fire teams, aerial bombardment and artillery barrages. The Foundation came down on what it still believed to be SCP-1915 like a fire god's fist, all heat and sound and bluster. Had it still been truly corporeal, I doubt even ashes would have remained. But whatever the absence truly was by that point, the tattered semblance of my flesh hanging around it had very little to do with it.
Okay, so I'm interested to see what he's going through in his head, and is he actually mad at the Foundation because they just thought he was, just a regular earthworm and just a regular reality bender that's not aware that he's a reality bender? Or is he actually more mad about himself for feeling like he was trapped within himself and he's like lashing out? Because if it was me, I'd be pretty annoyed at myself that I was trapped within my own mind and I thought I was like a loser that's been working a 9-to-5 slaving on a desk job, like, another cog in the machine, when I could just do whatever I want in this reality and multiple realities. So it's interesting to see like where his his anger, if he is angry, lies, because we don't know. We don't know. Could be just a void, absence.
It simply stood there and took it all in, and the Foundation's initial fury was soon spent. It then began to walk, and not too quickly either. For days, it simply leisurely strode on while the Foundation threw everything it had at it. I watched from within my deadbolt as it walked, unfeeling, uncaring, and this desert followed in its wake, as inscrutable and unstoppable as its harbinger.
Jeez.
We are not quite alone here. Some stubborn immortals persist, wretched creatures. A continent away, an ancient man still walks, tormented by 3 mocking voices. He believed that once he was the only one left, he would be allowed to rest.
Oh, yeah?
He was wrong.
Come on now.
Beneath the ground is a soul, suffocating as the earth slowly grinds its sanity to mulch.
Jeez.
From its prison of gold and rubies, there would be no release. Elsewhere lies a once smiling god, as the sands cover his prone figure.
Oh?
He does not resist.
Who?
He had once promised the world his love, promised humanity the stars. Sand pours through his fingers as he tries to gather his flame together.
The heck?
His people. But it is dying, and they are dead. Extinguished. When someone walks, they are bound to reach somewhere eventually, despite everyone's best efforts. And so the absence arrived at its first city.
Okay, cool.
The sands at its heels like an obedient lapdog. Oh, there have been villages and towns before that, but...
So I'm just, are these like analogies, or is the sand actually like, following him, like obeying his will? Is he like bending the sand to his will? That would be kind of cool, but like they're using so many metaphors and analogies, it's like kind of hard to like, put everything together. But I really like how well written this story is. This is really awesome. It's a different change of pace indeed.
The absence didn't seem to care enough to bother with them. It simply walked by, leaving them to the whims of the sands, which were only ever singular in their intent.
Dang.
But through the streets of the city it strode, as mobile task forces fought and fell to buy the civilian population just a few more minutes to evacuate. By this point, hiding what was truly going on became impossible, of course, as street after street sank beneath that gentle, crawling tide.
Okay, so it's
The
actually a
Foundation had,
sand
of course,
fall.
attempted to evacuate the city once it realized there would be no stopping the absence. But if I've learned anything in my eons as a corporate peon, is that organizing an operation of that magnitude is something that takes a lot more time than the Foundation had. It's a wonder they managed to save as many as they did.
And that leads me to a point where I'm assuming the SCP Foundation, they think SCP-1915 is this individual, at least before, they found out that it's more aware that it's not just a 30-year-old regular dude. So I'm assuming his appearance didn't change. Like his perception of himself that we could actually see, or he could see himself, is the same. Since the SCP Foundation, they thought it was the SCP-1915. So visually it was the same. So like it was nothing different. So that just leads me to believe like maybe he was just like, like just a regular person look-wise, but like his mindset was different. Like he wasn't just a worker. He was just a regular person with powers, but he just wasn't aware about it. I hope that made sense.
As for the rest, it had waited until night fell. I imagine it was an eerie sight, that lone figure standing beneath the frozen light of other worlds in that empty intersection between financial and residential districts, where train tracks used to be before the old steam locomotives went out of service and were never replaced by newer ones. Yes, it waited until it could see the stars. Then it burned. Without heat, without light, without life. It burned a hole through the city, and there was nothing to fill it in.
Damn.
Reality cannot suffer a vacuum, they always said, but the absence had shown how little it cared for reality.
That's
so
cool.
It was gone, just like that. How does one explain something like that? How do you describe what isn't there? Where one moment was a city of 500,000, the next, it wasn't. To the place it was, even the sands wouldn't come. It was just a scar. It was nothing.
He wiped it out?
It was then, I believe, that the Foundation realized it could not stand alone.
What?
The next few months of the Absence March saw them turn to their sometimes allies. Coalition mage killers and thermonuclear strikes. Initiative paladins and holy relics. Sniper rifle or sacred sword. Burning inferno or divine retribution. The Absence did not care, and soon the Foundation had no allies left to turn to. It then called on its once vicious enemies. Ink Eaters wove their art in maddening patterns
Ink Eaters?
to break the minds of the infinite. Archivists and librarians poured from the ways, bringing with them the knowledge of 100,000 worlds.
Haven't heard of them before.
Clockwork titans shook the barren whiteness of the sands with the thunder of metal. The Absence did not care.
Dang.
And soon, the Foundation ran out of enemies. In a last act of desperation, they then committed their final, most painful betrayal. The Wardens unleashed upon the world their prisoners.
The Wardens?
Of these, I have made note, though I doubt the Absence did the same.
Did they release like dangerous SCPs to try to defeat the Absence? Other reality benders? Yo, that'd be kind of cool.
On the blasted wasteland that was once Boston, it was assailed by two brothers. One savage,
Cain and Abel.
one violent, the other reluctant. They nevertheless fought with a graceful unity to take the breath away. In their eyes, I saw that they did not know each other for a very long while, and that they fought so that they could have the time to rectify this. I saw regret and hope, rage and desperation, but most of all I saw a simple need to be. I would like to believe that you and I would have been like them had we met, brother. They fought with the fury of 1,000 years of solitude. It did not suffice. In a wounded valley that...
Yo, that's deep. That's deep. I thought with 1,000 years of... Yo, we need to hear that one more time. Oh my god, this is written so well. Jesus.
First of all, I saw a simple need to be. I would like to believe that you and I would have been like them had we met, brother. They fought with the fury of 1,000 years of solitude. It did not suffice.
Still didn't help. 1,000 years of solitude. That's an insane analogy. And it still didn't suffice. Oh my god, bro. The absence is no joke, bro. Yo, holy shit.
In a wounded valley that had once been part of the Black Sea, we came across a self-proclaimed god. There was nothing but confidence in his eyes as he threw reality itself into disarray, bent and twisted its most fundamental laws to bring upon the absence untold destruction.
Another reality bender.
The earth froze and boiled and heaved. The air screamed with blighted glee, and the god he strode draped in a cloak of lightning, as time itself clawed at the absence with talons of utter unbeing.
Jeez.
Until the god came to meet the absence's lack of a gaze. Until his eyes rested on a nothing that lasted forever.
What?
Until he did not suffice.
What?
Before the walls of Acre,
Who is this
the ancient
god?
city was drowned by the desert. Two figures approached us. One was four-legged and horned. Its crown was ice. Its eyes, galaxies.
Dear God.
Its soul was power absolute.
Yo.
The second was a man, simple, humble, but possessing a love of being that extended to the edges of the universe. Compassion to pierce the deepest of hells that had nothing to do with weakness.
Wondertainment?
Of the two, I could not tell you which was more glorious, which was more terrifying. They met the absence with will alone.
Let's see.
And when I felt it fall on us, I thought I would weep. Surely nothing could withstand such a presence. Surely nothing would want to. But the absence was less than nothing, infinitely less. I have told you what became of kind Pangloss. Of the other, even less remained.
Pangloss?
For months they came, for years, for decades, alone or in groups, with ferocity or with a blank stare. The Foundation's prisoners threw themselves at the absence. I could not hope to imagine the reasons behind the actions of every individual anomaly.
It's weird that they call them prisoners. Well, I guess that's what they mean. Also, I don't think Wondertainment's a prisoner at the SCP Foundation. I don't even think they have him in captivity. Like, and actually, he's not even supposed to be like an SCP. He's supposed to be like a group or entity, a doctor, you know? So, like, if it is Wondertainment, it didn't say it's Wondertainment, but if it is, like, that wouldn't make any sense. Just saying.
But if I could guess, I would say that the idea of sharing existence with a thing like the absence galled them to the point of madness. I do not blame them. But by the end, the prisons ran empty, as the world dried up, as life was drained from it inch by inch, grain by grain, until only one city remained.
Dang.
I do not know by which power I was allowed to send my senses ahead of us, as the absence marched towards that tottering bastion which held in its quivering embrace the very last of humanity. As the sands around us buried the last of the trees that will ever grow in this land, I felt each tiny mote of life in that sad place like the flame of a cheap candle, moments before the typhoon.
Okay, quick question. On SCP-3812, the most powerful SCP, it was stated that he was like the highest level of being a reality bender, and there's levels below that. What level do you think he will be at, this SCP, this absence? Low, mid, or high tier? Because personally, I don't think it's like past SCP-38112. That's supposed to be like the pinnacle because it's always leveling up, always evolving, always getting stronger. So I think, I'm not too sure with this one because we don't have any like really high tier reality benders like tackling this. I really want to see another reality bender like stop him and see like what's going on, or like see like, you know, them going at it. I don't think I've ever seen like a reality bender versus another reality bender at different tiers and seeing what kind of battle that would be. That would be really interesting. So I doubt we'll get in this one, but I hope we get that in the future. I would love to see how that will go down.
In these moments, as twilight danced in lurid reds and oranges on ivory, I sensed them all. For you, brother, I witnessed. In a low, narrow room, a woman sat hunched at the foot of her even narrower bunk and couldn't bring herself to pray. She had lost her mother when she was but a babe, and though she was no longer young, her features still displayed to all the violence of that incident.
Oh, she got
Her mother stood
scars.
before the eater of children and did not budge.
The
And
eater.
when they both fell down, she sang still the praise of her Lord. She lost her father in the first days of the war against the Absents, as the paladins marched with holy fervor in their eyes. Her father had been a believer, had always been a solid presence in her life, an anchor immovable by anything but regret. He had promised her he would be back. He
Empty
did not
words.
need to lie,
Empty promises.
but his God had forsaken him when it counted most.
Which God are you
Forsaken
talking
all of
about?
them. And now Naomi knelt at the foot of the ever-narrowing bunk and could not pray. So she cursed instead. Below, in a series of dank cellars which might have at one point stored cheeses, a woman of about 40 tinkered with broken toys. When she was young, she had made wonders. Such wonders. In every line etched across her prematurely old face, I saw what could have been, had it.
Why do they emphasize wonders? Is it trying to refer to that being wondertainment? Because it was stated that wondertainment's not a male or female. Like, we don't know the sex. We don't even know if it's a person or an organization or one group or anything. So it's interesting that saying like this one girl likes making toys, which is what wondertainment does, and emphasize on wonder a lot. Let's rewind that back because that was they thought they slipped that in. Like I wasn't gonna notice that. Yo.
Cellars, which might have at one point stored cheeses, a woman of about 40 tinkered with broken toys. When she was young, she had made wonders. Such wonders.
She was young.
In every line etched across her prematurely old face, I saw what could have been,
Let's
had
see.
it not been for the absence. For me.
The
In
absence
the
made
dim
her
light and the
old?
soft noise of rotting wood crumbling beneath calloused fingers, I saw the death of potential. The death of all possibility. Though Isabel was
Jeez.
stubborn, as she always was, she knew that this toy would be her last.
What toy is this?
Just as well, she thought. After today, there would be none left to play with it. On the rooftop of the highest building,
Is this
still standing,
entertainment?
an elderly man watched the world come to an end. He was once an agent of the Foundation, once one among 100,000, ready, prepared, and collected. His duty was to instruct new agents what was proper for an agent to do, how it was proper for an agent to think.
We need to get some names for these people that they're talking about. Like, yo, come on.
And he had been very good at his job, since generally his recruits survived for long enough to thank him. But what was he now, he wondered, as he watched the sands pour over the paltry last line of defense that a few defiant fools erected the day before.
Was this Dr. Clef?
His lads and lasses were all long since dead, and all that he knew, all of his years of training and experience, in the end they amounted to less than nothing. No longer an agent, for there was no longer an agency.
Yo, Dr. Clef needs to make a cameo now. Because, yo, he's the reality anchor. This would be awesome to see him go against the absence, if he could even do anything. Because I don't know what level he is as a reality bender. But, bro, this would be awesome. If not another reality bender, I want to see him go out that. Like, I really want to see what will happen.
No longer a teacher, for the students were gone. No longer a man, since, well, it would not do to repeat that, now would it? No
What?
longer anything, and that was the cruelest joke. It no longer mattered if the absence arrived, he thought.
What did they do to
were
him?
already within it. A noise behind him, and the old man turned to see a small, mousy man in a wrinkled gray suit.
I think when it said like they're already in it, is referring that he controls everything within this reality, so you're within his grasp. That's what they meant. I think. I could be wrong, but that's what I just inferred. Let me rewind a little bit.
The absence arrived, he thought. They were already within it. A noise behind him, and the old man turned to see a small, mousy man in a wrinkled gray suit
Mousy
and a
man?
deflated hat that at one point was likely a fedora. He looked at the old man, but said nothing.
Who's this dude?
Lombardi looked back, and didn't know if to laugh or cry. Soon it ceased to matter.
What?
Such was the end. Quiet, small, bereft of heroics and great deeds,
Oh my
free of
god.
pretensions of great meaning. One night there was human race on the planet Earth. The next, there wasn't.
Bro, this reminds me just like from Infinity Wars when Thanos snapped his fingers and never like half the humanity was turned into sand or dust or whatever you want to say. Bro, but this is everyone. Bro, this is crazy.
And that was that. The stars did not wait for you, brother. When you took my power, when you burned yourself in the skies above, they looked upon you and felt nothing. The stars did not wait for humanity, for all the promise it showed, for all the promise others saw in them. But what of the absence?
What?
What of me? I am, by all accounts and possible qualifications, the greatest monster this world has ever saw.
Oh no, that might be
Any
Cap.
world saw. And yet, brother, I see now that the stars wait for us, for me. Where is the justice in that?
Brother?
Seek it not, for there is none.
Who's the other dude? I'm assuming like this is the absence referring to like everything that's going on because he's like saying, "What about me?" Hence the absence, him saying that because the stars do not wait for humanity. And who's this one that's referring to like brother? Like is that the other dude that he saw shooting down, or is this just part of his like his mental self, like his split personality? Like I don't know because towards the end of SCP-3812, like he was talking to like himself. A different reality, a different personality that got split after he was trying to like understand his powers and stuff, A and B. But they're not referring to this as anything. It's just it's really hard to gather. Let me just finish it.
But the fact remains, brother. The stars do not wait for you, but they wait for me, to take them into my embrace.
What?
I suspect I shall not be long.
And it's over. So the stars didn't wait for him, but it waited for this dude. But who's this dude? The one that originally had the powers? Okay, let me rewind this again before we go in depth about it.
Perhaps that any world saw.
Okay.
I am, by all accounts and possible qualifications, the greatest monster this world has ever saw. Perhaps that any world saw. And yet, brother, I see now that the stars wait for us, for me. Where is the justice in that?
Wait, hold up.
Seek it not. By all accounts and possible qualifications, the greatest monster this world has ever saw. Perhaps that any world saw. And yet, brother, I see now that the stars wait for us, for me. Where is the justice in that?
Okay.
Seek it not, for there is none. But the fact remains, brother. The stars do not wait for you, but they wait for me.
I think the powers itself is talking to the 30-year-old dude. Because he thought, what about me? Which is the abyss, or whatever it's called, the void. However, that's not the power. The power is with him now, because I guess the power could like change to different people. Someone gave the power away. And now, this guy is just the vessel. And maybe it's like saying the stars do not wait for you, my friend. Brother, it waits for me. I am the one that's in control. You're the puppet. Seems like this guy's been the puppet the whole time through this whole reality, thinking he was just a regular person that works a 9 to 5. So that would be interesting. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about that part of who's the one talking to him, because this is like really hard to gather because there's so many different like layers to this. So I really want to hear what you guys think. I think it's a powers talking to the 30-year-old. Maybe they already stated it earlier on and I just missed it. I'm not perfect, but please let me know because I'll love to find out what's for real and what's not.
Take them into my embrace. I suspect I shall not be long.
Yep. I want to hear that last part one more time.
But they wait for me, to take them into my embrace. I suspect I shall not be long.
That was good. That was a good story, guys. That was a good story. It was really hard to like follow everything without getting context of the individuals within each scene. So they were talking about like a lot of different beings, but they weren't really stating who they are. I know in the beginning they said like some of them's going to make a cameo, like the brothers Cain and Abel, the deer, Wondertainment. But there were so many different things that could have been like either or, like the dude with the hat that used to be a fedora, or the girl that used to make toys. It was such a wondertainment. It could have been either or. It could have been either old dude or that girl being Wondertainment. We didn't know for sure, so it's hard for me to understand what was going on. And they're talking about gods, multiple gods, and there's different SCP gods in this universe. So it was kind of weird to find out which one they were talking to. I wish they would have said which one's which, so I could kind of understand and like infer like different levels of what's happening in the scale of terms of power. And I wasn't even too sure Dr. Clef made a cameo. I want to know who was the one that was like teaching the SCP, agents, the one that was a teacher but's not a teacher anymore because there's no more students. And he's not even an agent anymore because there's no agency. Who was that agent that was in the foundation when it was a thing? Like, yeah, there's so much, but such a little time. But this is great. This was a great story. It was interesting to find out that the powers itself wasn't originated from the being that we got introduced to, the 30-year-old. It was originally someone, thrown away the power because they didn't think they could control it. Damn. And they threw away the will as well at the same time. That was really cool. So it could be like the will itself talking to the dude, because the power and the will, he lost his will and the power. So it could be two different things in the same body, but he's talking within himself because he's multi-layered. He's a reality bender. So that would make sense, and it was really awesome. Sorry if I rambled a lot, but with that being said, that concludes the reaction. If you guys enjoyed this, please remember to smash that like button. This was a doozy, guys, and also smash the sub button if you made it all the way to the end. If you guys did, I appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome, and if you guys are not part of the family, please join and have a good time with us. This is great. You guys came along for the whole ride. Let's make some more together. And with that being said, remember to turn on post notifications so you do not miss an upload. So with that all out of the way, unfortunately, that concludes today's episode. However, I'll catch you guys on the next one. With